Most men think attraction is created by doing more, more texting, more attention, more explaining, more chasing. But attraction rarely dies because a man did too little. It usually dies because he did too much. The uncomfortable truth is that many men lose a woman's interest the moment they make her the center of their life. They stop focusing on their purpose. They become emotionally dependent on her responses. They start measuring their worth by how much attention she gives them. And the moment that happens, the relationship dynamic changes because attraction isn't built on need, it's built on value, it's built on respect, and most importantly, it's built on emotional control. The men women chase aren't necessarily the best looking men. They're not always the richest men. They're usually the men who have mastered themselves. Today, I'm going to show you 7 daily habits that make a woman naturally invest more, think about you more, and ultimately chase you. Not because you're manipulating her, but because you're becoming the kind of man she doesn't want to lose. Let's begin. One of the fastest ways to destroy attraction without realizing it is constantly looking for validation from someone else. Many men think validation seeking only looks like openly asking questions such as, "Do you still like me?" or "Are we okay?" But in reality, it often shows up in much subtler ways. It appears when you become anxious because a text message takes longer than expected. It appears when your mood changes based on how much attention someone gives you. It appears when you constantly monitor another person's behavior for reassurance that you're still important to them. The problem is not wanting to feel loved or appreciated. The problem is becoming emotionally dependent on external confirmation for your sense of worth. The moment your confidence begins to rely on another person's approval, you hand them control over your emotional state. Most people can sense insecurity long before it is ever spoken. You don't need to tell someone that you're uncertain about yourself because your behavior reveals it. When a man constantly seeks reassurance, he unconsciously communicates that he doesn't fully believe in his own value. Every request for validation carries an unspoken message that says, "I need you to confirm what I cannot confirm for myself." Over time, this creates pressure inside the relationship. Instead of enjoying the connection naturally, the other person starts feeling responsible for maintaining your confidence. Attraction struggles to survive in an environment where one person becomes the emotional caretaker of the other's self esteem. What makes confidence attractive is not arrogance, dominance, or pretending not to care. True confidence comes from emotional stability. It comes from knowing who you are, regardless of how someone else feels about you on a particular day. A confident man understands that attraction naturally rises and falls. He knows that people have moods, responsibilities, stress, and distractions that have nothing to do with him. Because he isn't constantly searching for signs of rejection, he doesn't overreact to temporary changes in behavior. He remains grounded. He remains composed. He remains focused on his own life instead of obsessively trying to manage someone else's feelings. This is why emotionally strong men often appear more attractive without making any extra effort. They are not spending their energy trying to convince people to choose them. They are not chasing reassurance every time uncertainty appears. They trust themselves enough to handle situations without panic. If someone likes them, great. If someone loses interest, they can accept that reality without losing their sense of identity. That level of self trust creates a completely different presence. People feel it in the way you speak, the way you carry yourself, and the way you respond to challenges. A powerful mindset shift happens when you stop asking, "How do I make her validate me?" and start asking, "Why am I giving another person the authority to decide my worth?" The more you build confidence through your own actions, discipline, standards, and personal growth, the less dependent you become on outside approval. Ironically, the moment you stop chasing validation is often the moment you become more attractive because people are naturally drawn to those who already recognize their own value. One of the most attractive qualities a man can develop is having a life that remains meaningful whether he is in a relationship or not. Many men unintentionally weaken attraction because they slowly allow their entire world to revolve around one person. At first, it doesn't seem harmful. They simply want to spend more time together. They want to be available. They want to show commitment. But over time, something begins to change. Their hobbies become less important. Their goals become secondary. Their friendships receive less attention. Their routines disappear. Without realizing it, they start organizing their entire emotional state around the presence and behavior of one woman. The relationship stops being an addition to their life and starts becoming their entire identity. This is where attraction often begins to decline because healthy attraction requires two individuals with their own sense of purpose, not one person carrying the emotional weight of both lives. Many men believe that making a woman their highest priority proves how much they care. In reality, it often creates the opposite effect. When someone becomes the sole source of your happiness, confidence, excitement, and fulfillment, enormous pressure is placed on that relationship. Every text message starts carrying emotional significance. Every disagreement feels like a threat. Every moment of distance creates anxiety. The relationship becomes fragile because your emotional stability depends on its constant success. Instead of showing love from a place of strength, you begin operating from a place of fear. Fear of losing her, fear of disappointing her, fear of being abandoned, and fear changes behavior in ways that are impossible to hide. It creates neediness, overthinking, jealousy, and emotional dependence, all of which slowly erode attraction. A man with purpose approaches relationships differently. He values the woman in his life, but he also values his mission. He continues pursuing his goals. He continues building his career. He continues investing in his physical health, personal development, and long term vision. His life remains full and meaningful because it is built on multiple foundations rather than a single emotional connection. This doesn't make him cold or detached, it makes him balanced. When a relationship is no longer responsible for fulfilling every emotional need, he becomes more relaxed, more confident, and more enjoyable to be around. He is choosing the relationship because he wants it, not because he needs it to feel complete. One of the most misunderstood aspects of attraction is that people are often drawn to those who are moving towards something meaningful. Purpose creates energy, ambition creates direction, discipline creates confidence. When a woman sees that your life contains goals, responsibilities, passions, and commitments beyond the relationship, she recognizes that your attention has value because it is not given out of boredom or desperation. She knows that when you make time for her, it is a conscious choice rather than an emotional necessity. The strongest relationships are built when two people bring full lives together, instead of expecting one another to become the entire source of fulfillment. The moment you stop making a relationship the center of your universe and start building a life that excites you independently, your mindset changes. You become less fearful, less controlling, and less dependent on constant reassurance. Your confidence begins to come from the direction of your life rather than the status of your relationship. And that shift affects every interaction you have. One of the biggest differences between a man who maintains attraction and a man who loses it is not intelligence, appearance, or even communication skills. It is emotional control. Most men think attraction is built through what they say, but attraction is often determined by how they react. Anyone can appear confident when everything is going well. Anyone can remain calm when they are getting the attention they want. The real test begins when uncertainty enters the picture. It begins when a text message goes unanswered for hours. It begins when plans change unexpectedly. It begins when someone becomes distant, disagrees with you, or behaves in a way that triggers insecurity. Those moments reveal the emotional habits that are operating beneath the surface. They expose whether a man is leading his emotions or being controlled by them. The problem is that many men react before they think. The moment they feel uncomfortable, they immediately try to remove that discomfort. If a woman becomes distant, they start sending multiple messages. If she seems less enthusiastic, they demand reassurance. If conflict appears, they become defensive, argumentative, or emotionally overwhelmed. These reactions are usually driven by fear rather than logic. Fear of rejection, fear of abandonment, fear of losing someone they have become emotionally attached to. The more those fears take control, the more impulsive their behavior becomes. Instead of responding with confidence, they react from anxiety. Instead of creating stability, they create emotional turbulence. Ironically, the very behaviors intended to keep someone close often push that person further away. Emotional discipline is the ability to remain grounded when emotions are pulling you toward impulsive actions. It does not mean suppressing your feelings or pretending not to care. It means refusing to let temporary emotions dictate permanent decisions. A disciplined man can feel frustration without exploding. He can feel uncertainty without panicking. He can experience disappointment without losing control of himself. He understands that emotions are valuable sources of information, but they are poor leaders. Just because you feel anxious does not mean something is wrong. Just because you feel insecure does not mean you need immediate reassurance. Just because you feel rejected does not mean you should react emotionally. Mature men learn to separate feelings from actions. One of the reasons emotional control is so attractive is because it creates a sense of security. People naturally trust individuals who remain composed under pressure. Think about the people you respect most. They are usually not the loudest or most emotional individuals in the room. They are often the people who stay calm when others become reactive. They think clearly during conflict. They communicate without losing control. They don't allow temporary circumstances to dictate their behavior. This quality becomes even more valuable in relationships because emotional stability reduces unnecessary drama and creates an environment where trust can grow. Many men underestimate how closely attraction is connected to emotional consistency. When your mood constantly rises and falls based on another person's behavior, you become unpredictable. One day you're confident, the next day you're anxious. One day you're calm, the next day you're overwhelmed. Emotional mastery creates consistency. It allows you to maintain your standards, your confidence, and your sense of direction, regardless of temporary emotional fluctuations. The strongest position in any relationship is not having complete control over someone else's feelings. It is having complete control over your own reactions when those feelings change. One of the most attractive qualities a man can possess is self respect, and self respect is impossible without standards. Many people talk about boundaries, values, and expectations, but very few consistently enforce them when it becomes uncomfortable. The reality is that standards only matter when they cost you something. It is easy to say you deserve respect when everything is going well. It is easy to talk about your principles when nobody is challenging them. The real test comes when someone you care about crosses a line, disrespects your values, or repeatedly behaves in a way that conflicts with what you claim to stand for. In those moments, your actions reveal whether your standards are real or whether they exist only as words. People pay attention to what you tolerate far more than what you say. Every time you accept treatment that goes against your values, you send a message about what you believe you deserve. Many men lose respect in relationships because they become afraid of consequences. They fear that enforcing a boundary will create conflict. They fear that expressing a standard will make someone leave. They fear that standing up for themselves will cost them the relationship. As a result, they begin making excuses for behavior they know is unhealthy. They ignore disrespect. They tolerate inconsistency. They accept broken promises. They repeatedly lower their standards in order to keep someone around. The problem is that every compromise of self respect creates a deeper level of emotional dependence. The relationship becomes less about mutual respect and more about avoiding loss. Once fear becomes the primary motivation behind your decisions, your confidence begins to erode because deep down you know you are betraying your own values. One of the most misunderstood truths about attraction is that people often respect those who respect themselves. This does not mean becoming controlling, demanding, or rigid. It means having clear standards for how you expect to be treated and being willing to walk away when those standards are consistently ignored. A man with self respect does not beg for basic decency. He does not repeatedly explain why honesty matters. He does not spend months trying to convince someone to value him. He understands that his energy is better spent investing in people who naturally align with his values rather than forcing compatibility where it does not exist. That mindset creates strength because it removes desperation from the relationship dynamic. When you have standards and consistently enforce them, something important begins to happen. Your confidence becomes rooted in your character instead of other people's approval. You stop making decisions based on fear of rejection. You stop tolerating situations that damage your self-worth. You stop sacrificing your principles in exchange for temporary attention. This creates a sense of emotional stability that people can feel. They know where you stand. They know what you value. They know that your behavior is guided by principles rather than emotions. That predictability builds trust because people generally feel safer around individuals whose standards remain consistent regardless of circumstances. The strongest boundaries are rarely loud. They do not require threats, arguments, or dramatic ultimatums. True confidence is often quiet. It is the ability to calmly recognize when a situation no longer aligns with your values and act accordingly. A man who genuinely respects himself does not spend his time trying to control other people's behavior. He focuses on controlling his own choices. He understands that standards are not about changing someone else, they are about protecting his time, energy, peace of mind, and self respect from situations that continually demand he abandon who he is. One of the most misunderstood concepts in attraction is availability. The moment people hear the phrase, be less available, they often assume it means playing games, ignoring messages, creating artificial distance, or pretending to be busy. That is not what emotional maturity looks like. Becoming less available is not about manipulating someone's emotions. It is about building a life that naturally demands your time, attention, and energy. The truth is that many men become too available because they have allowed one person to become their primary focus. Every notification gets an immediate response. Every invitation receives instant acceptance. Every moment of free time is directed toward the relationship. While this may seem like commitment, it often creates an unhealthy dynamic where one person's entire schedule revolves around another person's presence. Over time, what initially feels flattering can begin to feel predictable, and what feels predictable can eventually be taken for granted. Human nature tends to place a higher value on things that require effort, patience, and intentionality. This principle applies to relationships just as much as it applies to any other area of life. When your attention is constantly available without limits, people often stop recognizing its value. Not because they are bad people, but because familiarity can reduce appreciation. Many men mistakenly believe that being available every second of every day will strengthen attraction. In reality, attraction often grows when two people maintain healthy individual lives and choose to invest in each other rather than relying on constant access. A relationship should enhance your life, not consume every available moment within it. The problem with excessive availability is that it often comes from emotional dependence rather than genuine generosity. A man who has nothing meaningful occupying his attention naturally becomes hyper focused on the relationship. He starts waiting for messages, he constantly checks his phone, he organizes his mood around another person's level of responsiveness. If she replies quickly, he feels good. If she takes longer than expected, he becomes anxious. His emotional state becomes tied to someone else's behavior. This is not attraction, this is dependency. The more dependent you become, the more pressure you place on the relationship to provide emotional stability that should come from within yourself. A man with purpose operates differently. He has responsibilities, goals, interests, and commitments that matter to him. His life contains structure beyond his romantic relationships. When he is working, he is focused on his work. When he is pursuing personal goals, he is fully engaged in those goals. When he spends time with friends and family, he is present in those moments. Because his life is full, he does not feel compelled to seek constant interaction. His attention becomes valuable because it is intentional rather than automatic. People can sense the difference between someone who chooses to spend time with them and someone who simply has nothing else going on. There is also a powerful psychological shift that occurs when you stop making yourself endlessly accessible. You begin respecting your own time. You stop treating your schedule as something that can be rearranged at a moment's notice. You recognize that your energy, focus, and attention are resources that should be invested wisely. This naturally creates healthier relationship dynamics because it encourages mutual effort rather than one sided pursuit. The goal is not to make someone miss you through absence. The goal is to build a life so meaningful and structured that your availability becomes balanced, intentional, and rooted in self respect rather than emotional dependence. One of the most common mistakes men make in dating and relationships is believing that attraction grows through constant giving. They assume that if they initiate every conversation, plan every date, send every message first, solve every problem, and carry every interaction, the relationship will naturally become stronger. While effort is important, attraction is not built solely through what you invest. Attraction is often built through what both people invest. Many men unknowingly create an imbalance by taking full responsibility for the connection. They become the planner, the pursuer, the communicator, and the emotional leader in every situation. Over time, this creates a dynamic where one person is constantly contributing while the other simply receives. The problem with this approach is that people tend to value what they actively invest in more than what is freely handed to them. Human psychology works in a very predictable way. When people contribute time, energy, attention, emotions, and effort towards something, they become more emotionally attached to it. This principle applies to relationships, friendships, careers, and even personal goals. The more someone invests, the more meaningful the outcome becomes. Yet, many men unintentionally prevent this process from happening. They become so focused on proving their worth that they never allow a woman the opportunity to demonstrate hers. They rush to fill every silence. They initiate every interaction. They solve every challenge before she has a chance to contribute. Instead of creating mutual investment, they create a one sided pattern where all the effort flows in a single direction. This often comes from a deeper fear that many people never acknowledge. The fear is that if they stop carrying the relationship, everything will fall apart. They worry that if they do not text first, the conversation will end. If they do not make plans, nothing will happen. If they stop pursuing, the connection will disappear. What they fail to realize is that this fear often reveals valuable information. A healthy relationship should not survive solely because one person refuses to stop pushing it forward. Genuine interest naturally creates effort from both sides. If someone values the connection, they will look for opportunities to participate in maintaining it. They will reach out, they will show curiosity, they will make time. They will contribute in ways that feel natural rather than forced. Allowing a woman to invest does not mean becoming passive or playing emotional games. It does not mean withholding affection or creating unnecessary distance. It means creating enough space for reciprocity to emerge. It means resisting the urge to control every stage of the interaction. When you stop trying to manage every outcome, you allow people's true intentions to reveal themselves. You begin to see who is genuinely interested and who simply enjoys receiving attention. That clarity is valuable because it prevents you from wasting energy on relationships that lack mutual effort. A confident man understands that attraction cannot be negotiated, forced, or carried indefinitely by one person. He recognizes that meaningful relationships require participation from both sides. Instead of constantly trying to earn someone's affection through endless effort, he creates opportunities for investment and pays attention to whether they are accepted. When a woman contributes her time, attention, emotions, and effort to the relationship, she becomes more connected to it because she has helped build it. Mutual investment creates mutual value, and mutual value creates a stronger foundation than one-sided pursuit ever could. This may be the most important habit of all because it sits at the foundation of everything else. Most men spend years trying to understand how to make someone want them. They search for the perfect message, the perfect response, the perfect strategy, or the perfect way to keep someone's attention. Their focus remains fixed on the other person. They analyze every interaction, every text message, every signal, and every change in behavior. They become obsessed with being chosen. The problem is that when your primary goal is to gain someone's approval, your entire mindset becomes reactive. Your emotions rise and fall based on how much attention you receive. Your confidence becomes dependent on whether someone wants you. Your sense of value becomes tied to another person's decision. This is why chasing is so exhausting. It forces you to constantly seek something outside yourself in order to feel complete. The men who naturally command respect and attraction tend to operate differently. Instead of asking, "How do I get her to choose me?" they ask, "Who am I becoming?" Their focus shifts away from controlling outcomes and toward improving themselves. They understand that lasting confidence is not built through validation from others. It is built through promises kept to yourself. Every time you develop discipline, improve your health, strengthen your mindset, expand your skills, or pursue meaningful goals, you create a deeper level of self-respect. That self-respect becomes the foundation of genuine confidence because it is earned rather than borrowed from external approval. One of the biggest mistakes people make in relationships is believing that attraction should be the center of their life. In reality, attraction tends to grow when it becomes a byproduct rather than the main objective. A man who is constantly chasing attention often appears needy because his focus is directed outward. A man who is focused on growth appears grounded because his focus is directed inward. He is not spending every day wondering how to impress someone. He is spending every day becoming a stronger version of himself. This difference is subtle, but it completely changes the energy he brings into relationships. One mindset communicates scarcity, the other communicates abundance. There is also a powerful psychological effect that occurs when you commit yourself to growth. You begin developing confidence that is independent of your relationship status. Whether someone stays or leaves, your mission continues. Whether a relationship succeeds or fails, your progress continues. Whether someone chooses you or rejects you, your development continues. This creates emotional freedom because your identity is no longer built around a single person or a single outcome. You stop viewing rejection as proof of your inadequacy. You stop viewing approval as proof of your worth. Instead, your confidence becomes rooted in your actions, your discipline, and your commitment to personal growth. People are naturally drawn to those who are moving forward in life. Progress creates energy. Purpose creates direction. Ambition creates momentum. When a man is genuinely focused on becoming better, he develops qualities that cannot be faked. His confidence becomes more authentic. His standards become stronger. His emotional reactions become more controlled. His presence becomes more grounded. He no longer approaches relationships from a position of need because he has built a life that already has meaning. The goal is not to become someone worthy of love. The goal is to become someone worthy of your own respect. Because the moment you start focusing on becoming rather than chasing, your entire relationship with yourself begins to change. The moment you stop chasing validation, attention, and approval, you become the kind of man people naturally respect. Focus on building your value, mastering your emotions, and creating a life that excites you with or without anyone else in it. Because the strongest attraction doesn't come from trying to be chosen, it comes from becoming someone who knows his worth. Keep growing, keep improving, and let your actions speak louder than your desire for attention.